Welcome to this video describing the workflow of reserving an economic name. This service is the first of two services required to open a business within Abu Dhabi. I'm Jordan Kite from the core team, and I'll be your guide for this video. We'll be using Camunda Modeler, which is a part of the TAM Development Experience platform and is used to document all of your journey workflows. If this is your first time viewing a workflow within Camunda, please watch the Ordering a Pizza workflow video before proceeding. This workflow looks at a real-world example of reserving an economic name from the Department of Economic Development, or DED for short. At first glance, you'll notice that there are two pools, one for the front end, where the end user will interact with TAM, and another for the back end, where all of the microservices and APIs will orchestrate the service of reserving an economic name. The very first thing that the user will perform is inputting the economic name details. They will first provide which legal form that they will register their name under. A legal form is the type of legal structure that the business will be formed, such as a limited liability company or a branch. You can notice the output for this event by clicking on the Properties button, followed by clicking on Inputs and Outputs. After this point, the user will provide the ownership details that would be associated with the economic name. This section would contain details such as the name and birth date for each partner, sponsor, general manager, or other individuals that are associated with your business. After this point, you will then select the activities that your name will be associated with, such as financial services or restaurant activities. Finally, you will provide the economic name of your choice and submit it for approval by the DED. This marks the completion of the Input Economic Name and License Details section. Now, before moving to the next step of the journey, there is a redirect workflow, which is used in case a user wants to go back and change their answers. For example, a user wishing to change the legal form can freely navigate back to the legal form section to reselect the legal form of their choice before submitting their economic name for approval. However, there's a series of rules that have been identified as demonstrated by this icon that's listed within this task. For example, the user cannot change their legal form or representative details after their economic name has been submitted for approval. For linking an activity with your own rules, you can click on the Properties panel, followed by clicking on the General button. Underneath the Implementation section, there's a section that is called DMN. You can refer to. Let's move on to the next section, which is submit the economic name and wait for DED approval. In this subservice, a token will be obtained through a microservice. You can click on the Properties panel, followed by clicking on Inputs and Output to view the input parameters for this microservice. The next microservice that will be used is the Submit Economic Name service. We can also view the inputs and output within the Properties panel on the right here. After these microservices are initiated, there will be a period of time until the economic name is approved or declined. So this parallel gateway demonstrates what happens if an approval status is still required or once an approval status is retrieved. So once the approval status is retrieved, this information will be sent to the front end. Now, there's two different workflows that can happen. Let's first discuss what happens if the economic name is rejected or declined. which is in this section here. If the name is declined due to an incorrect representative that is associated to the name, as demonstrated here, then the user will be required to change their details and resubmit the name for approval. However, if the economic name is rejected, as demonstrated here, then the user will have to restart the entire process again to reserve their economic name. Let's now move forward to the flow where the economic name is approved, which is up here. The user will be able to see the payment summary of their name depending on the selections that were made from before. They will then see one window before proceeding to their payment. After this point, we'll move to the payment section that is here. After clicking on this window, the user will be redirected to a payment gateway to pay for their economic name. If the payment is unsuccessful, as demonstrated here, the user will retry their payment. If this still doesn't work for the user, then an escalation will occur, as demonstrated here. And the user will be taken back to the payment summary page to retry paying for their name. You can see this escalation flow from here, going all the way back to retrying the payment. We can click on the payment escalation icon followed by the properties panel to understand what the escalation code is, which is demonstrated here. Once the payment is successful, the name is paid for, and the user will go through another approval, as demonstrated here, which is known as the initial approval or background check for each representative listed on the name. As demonstrated from before, there will be a period of time that will occur until the initial approval is approved or declined. This parallel gateway determines what happens if an approval status is still required, as demonstrated here, or once an approval status is received, as demonstrated here. Finally, the status of the initial approval will be sent to the front end, as demonstrated here. Again, there's two separate flows that will happen once an initial approval, the status is sent back to the end user. Let's first go through the flow when the initial approval is either returned or rejected. So for the first segment of this flow, in case the initial approval is being returned, the user will need to fix issues related to their economic name, such as tweaking the details of the representative information. Now, in the case of when an initial approval is rejected, the name is rejected and the user will have to resolve this issue offline. Now let's move up to when the initial approval is approved. So once the initial approval is approved, the name is successfully reserved for the end user. The user can now proceed with obtaining their economic license. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and we encourage you to explore more videos. Thank you.